Despite the popular myth of the omnipresent China about to take over the world with its huge population, in fact, China's demographic situation in recent years has become not just bad, but catastrophic. After decades of strict birth control, including the famous one-child policy, as well as major social and economic upheavals in the 20th century, China is facing serious consequences for its demography. The country is now facing challenges such as aging population, shrinking working age population and a failing birth rate. The one-child policy was introduced in China in 1979 to control rapid population growth that could be a serious impediment to economic development. Under the policy, Chinese families were prohibited from having more than one child except in certain rural and ethnic regions. The original idea was to make the country's population more mature, that is, fewer children, more adults, able-bodied citizens who would boost the economy by their labor. And so it happened. Population growth slowed down. China gained more able-bodied people, which contributed to economic growth in the noughties and tens, but then it led to serious demographic consequences. By 2015, China had a historically low birth rate and the population began to age faster than most other development countries. It turned out that it was very easy to lower the birth rate by law, but not to raise it back up. First demographic disaster is skewed gender structure, which is essentially the fault of the Chinese authorities themselves. In the culture of many Asian countries, it is preferable to have a boy child, and this is still common today. Many girls are simply aborted as soon as the gender is known. Naturally, the one-child policy has only made the situation worse. For example, here is the gender and age pyramid for Canada. The dark blue at the bottom shows that there are slightly more males under 40 than females. This is because for every 100 girls there are usually 105 boys born. And while in the past many boys didn't make it to adulthood, now with the medical advances and increased overall safety, this is causing a slight skew to reverse around the age of 40 in favor of females. However, now look at the pyramid of China. You can see how much of a huge bias in favor of boys. This leads to a huge imbalance of sexes. Many of these boys in the future simply will not be able to find a couple, and therefore for prospects for fertility growth in the future becomes less. Next factor is population aging. It's one of the China's most serious demographic problems with long-lasting consequences. According to China's National Bureau of Statistics, in 2020, the number of people aged 65 and older accounted for about 15% of total population, and this proportion continues to grow every year. It's expected that by 2050, 1 in 3 Chinese will be in the age over of 65. By comparison, the proportion of people over 65 in the USA is 16%, in Russia 18%, in the UK also 18%. In Africa, the share of people over 65 years does not usually exceed 5%. It is worth realizing that China's population is aging much faster than in European culture countries. In 2020, China had 1.28 children per woman. In 2023, this figure dropped to 1.07. Now let's look at other major countries. Average, there are 1.64 children per woman in the United States, 1.5 in Russia and 1.56 in the UK. In addition, these countries have a lot of immigrants coming to rejuvenate the overall population, while China has very few immigrants coming in. The aging of the population puts significant pressure on the pension system, healthcare and social security. The need for health services and care for the elderly is increasing rapidly, jeopardizing the sustainability of the social system. In recent years, the Chinese government has abolished the one-child policy and moved to a two-child policy in 2016 and then to a three-child policy in 2021. However, these measures have not yielded the desired result. Young Chinese are not hurrying to have children due to high education and housing costs, as well as changed priorities where career and personal interest take center stage. There is also a national peculiarity. In Asian countries, it is customary to invest heavily in a child to provide the best conditions and education, and in the condition of modern life, such as expensive education, high competition for places in universities, living in small apartments in densely populated megacities, is clearly not convinced to the birth of second and subsequent children. Children themselves, who grew up in an atmosphere of fierce competition and eternal race for education and career, simply cannot afford to have a child until they are at least 30 years old, and after that they can afford a maximum of one. Demographic changes have a significant impact on the economy. A shrinking working-age population and an increasing number of elderly people led to lower productivity and higher social costs. In the long term, China may face a labor shortage and economic growth may stall, as the slowdown is already underway, while the population decline has already begun. By the end of 2022, China lost 800,000 people. By the end of 2022, already 2 million of its citizens. The United Nations forecast that India will overtake China in population has already come true in 2021. Further forecasts from international analysts and organizations do not see anything good for China, which may well be true, because the country's leadership is not taking any action. According to various estimates, by the end of 21st century, the population of China will equal the population of the United States and will be in the neighborhood of 500–600 million people. A sharp drop in population is expected after 2040, when the large generation of boomers will begin to die, and there will be no one to replace them. New people have simply not been born. What is surprising is that the Chinese government does not yet consider demographics to be a serious problem, as there is no talk of demographics or any serious movement to improve the situation. Despite the development of automation programs and innovation to replace the shrinking working population with technology, it is not increasing the population. China is completely ignoring the experience of nations already facing this problem. There is still no social assistance for young families, no financial incentives for having children in the country, and there is no talk of even introducing them. Also, many European countries have managed to raise their birth rates by improving social security. Not to the level of reproduction, of course, but still having a birth rate of 1.5 is way better than 1.05. China's demographic problem remains one of the most serious challenges for the country in the near future. But one thing is clear, the claim that the 21st century will be the century of China is probably wrong. Nominally, China will be the leader in population for a very long time, but it will be extremely difficult to be a superpower with a population of 500 million old people.